Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and it is 10 p.m. It is 10 p.m. I'm not gonna lie. I was putting my slipper socks on my little piddle paddles, and I realized it was 10 p.m. and a video had not gone live today at 9:30 a.m. I left you stranded. I failed. I failed in my duty to upload. It's all right. It's all right. Um, uh, Listen, we were putting up some posts on our turkey enclosure today, and they were giant posts, and it was a great workout. It was lovely, but the time flew. The time flew by. So let's make a video for today. My name is Vince White. I'm an employment attorney. On this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answer they need from an employment attorney. We have a question here from YouTube user Kata. Kata, Kata, I assume, from the martial arts practice form. Kata. And YouTube user Kata says, how different are mental disability suits from physical disabilities? Okay, so in terms of the law, not very different at all. In terms of complexity and prejudice, wildly different. And I'll get into that. So we'll touch upon them both. Listen, in every single stage, from the time you disclose a mental health disability to the time you're complaining to HR about what's going on because you're experiencing discrimination on the basis of that disability, to the time you're going to attorneys to try to get representation for that disability, for this disability claim, from the time you're presenting your case to investigators, judges, arbitrators, juries, at every step of the way, you're going to run into the human/U.S. prejudice towards mental health. And listen, people have told me that it's a U.S. thing. It does not appear to be true in my experience. As far as I can tell, it is omnipresent the world over, but maybe there's some culture that I'm not aware of that is fully understanding and sympathetic towards mental health disabilities. Perhaps that is true. So you can tell me it's just a U.S. thing, but I'm very doubtful on that. I'm very, very, very doubtful. And listen, I'm not an American exceptionalist. I don't think I'm not saying it couldn't be true. I'm just saying I don't think this one's true. So there's a lot of aggression and ignorance and resistance to mental health disabilities and their accommodations at every stage. Now, that can take the form of someone not wanting to accommodate you for a disability they can't see, when they might have been incredibly accommodating if you were, I don't know, in a wheelchair, right? Might take the form of your investigator saying, that's a little convenient. It's a little convenient that you need intermittent FMLA during uncertain scheduled events when you, not scheduled, uncertain recurring events when your mental health disability flares up. That's convenient. Sounds like vacation time to me, right? Like, listen, I've heard investigators talk like that, just vomiting ignorance right into the phone. Listen, jurors, judges, everyone at every stage, attorneys. Attorneys can be the worst, frankly, because the attorneys are the ones who are here to theoretically help you. But in our field, there's a nasty, I don't want to call it a consensus because not everyone agrees. Certainly our firm does not agree. But there's a nasty notion that is widely held that clients with mental health disabilities will shorten your career. And it's because there is a lot of truth to the fact that clients with mental health disabilities, some of them will treat their attorneys very, very poorly. Now, this is not because they're bad people. This is because they are dealing with a mental health disability. And so, listen, not going to lie to you. Certainly there's days you wake up and listen to your voicemail and it's like, I should cut your head off. You're like, what? What? I just won you $600,000. What? 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 Why? Why? My head? Why would you cut my head off? And it's just like, okay. I guess I need to just remember that stuff happens, right? Like, so this notion in our field, it's not, it's not born of nothing. It's born of the fact that people have a hard time approaching mental health disability with the correct attitude, right? Like, when I get the voicemail from the gentleman, we helped greatly, right? Helped him bigly, right? And he says, I should cut your head off. I'm like, oh boy, I hope Steve's okay. It sounds like Steve is having a mental health event. I guess I gotta sit down and think. I don't know if I have standing. I don't know if I'm allowed to call Steve's mental health professional. I know Steve's mental health professional. She testified in Steve's case. She's amazing. I don't represent Steve anymore. Can I just call her? Is that the correct thing to do? Is that the ethical thing to do? I got to sit down and think about that. I can't call Steve's family because theoretically that communication was confidential, and it could embarrass Steve. Right? And that's what you have to do instead of being like, God damn it, Steve, how dare you say you're going to cut my head off? Right? Like, that's not an option. You aren't allowed. Right? Unless, listen, it's different. If you have legitimate fear for your life, which also happens from time to time in our field, although usually not tied to mental health, usually tied to very angry defendants, which may also have their own issues going on, but you'll never know, right? You have to, you owe your client a duty of loyalty, and that includes, doesn't get extinguished when your client has a mental health event and says some things that everyone is going to regret, right? That happens. But the upshot of that happening is a lot of attorneys in this field will try their darndest to not take cases for mental health claims. They just don't want to bring those cases because they'll say, oh my God, it's going to destroy my quality of life, or oh my God, it's going to shorten my lifespan, or oh my God, they're so abusive, which you might as well just be like, you people, right? Like, it's not okay, right? First off, it's a very broad brush you're painting with, right? But listen, even if someone does deal with a mental health disability that you think it would be rough on you, it's the job. It's the job. Like, you signed up to help the people with their jobs. And a lot of people, probably more people than we want to admit, are dealing with mental health disabilities. Most of us probably have a variety of them that we're dealing with, right? So just being like, oh, I don't take mental health disability cases. They treat us like shit. I don't think that's ethical. I guess I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life or your practice. It's not my job to tell you what cases you have to take. But I'll tell you that I think we have to take those cases. If someone could be accommodated and successfully work and have all the amazing things that flow into your life from labor, from work, then I think it's our job to help them safeguard that, right? By the same token, there's people who probably can't be accommodated, right? If if the mental health disability is that you commonly attack people physically, yeah, I don't. You probably can't be accommodated. There may not be an accommodation for that, right? Um, a lot of people would say schizophrenia can't be accommodated. Do not agree. Do not agree. There's different forms that can take and different degrees, and some people suffering from schizophrenia can have a very successful work life. Just the reality of the situation. And if you don't feel qualified to have that, and you probably shouldn't because we're just attorneys, right? You got to have a conversation with the health professional. Be like, hey, okay, so listen, you've got a claim, potential client, and I get it. You're suffering from schizophrenia. And I don't understand the totality of what that means for you as a human being. But I do feel honor bound to some extent to try and help. But I have concerns about whether or not you could be accommodated. Like, could you do this job? Can I talk to your mental health professional? And if the person says no and I should cut your head off, let's be honest, there's a chance that maybe they couldn't be accommodated, right? The person says, yeah, that's reasonable. I get it. I get it. There's a lot of prejudice around. It's a big phrase, schizophrenia. Like, I'm just using an example because my mother had schizophrenia, right? I'm just using an example that's like comfortable for me. It may frustrate people. I'm not looking to frustrate anyone. I'm trying to have a real, very, very frank conversation about this. You talk to the mental health professional, who's the treating mental health professional, say, hey, you've been treating this person for 4 years, whatever it is, right? And can this person do this job? Like, with the right accommodations. If I went out there and I went in the trenches and I ripped those accommodations out of the employer and I made it happen, could this potential client successfully complete this labor, do this work, succeed fiscally, economically, in the pride of work? Could they succeed? And if the answer is yes, then I would say to you, well, embrace that fight if you think you can win that case. Sincerely. You still have to be able to win the case, right? Like, it's not, nobody can afford to just fund cases they know are going to lose. And it's the other reason attorneys don't like those cases, because you have to do a lot of extra education. You've got to really teach the big words. People are terrified of big words like schizophrenia, PTSD. Sometimes you'll still run into human beings who are like, oh my god, PTSD, was he in the war? You're like, what? That's not, oh my god, you're working with like a 1990s idea of what PTSD is. Certainly it could be caused by combat. Doesn't mean they're going to go postal, right? Like, these two things are not, the PTSD diagnosis is not the violence in the world. Like, these are not the same thing. These are not even necessarily related, right? Like, not even close. But there's still people who think that way. People are very aggressive towards bipolar conditions, right? Like, and I've shared this on the channel before, every single member of my family, with the exception of myself, my grandfather, I think were diagnosed with some degree of bipolar condition. That diagnosis for several members of my family occurred when I was about 22. Would have been cool to have the diagnosis earlier. I can remember being a child, sitting on the stairs and just being like, I think there's something wrong with me. I don't feel what these people feel. I don't understand the depth of feeling that people in my family are capable of occasionally experiencing. Because I had no understanding of what was going on. Neither did they. They were not diagnosed. In many ways, modern medicine had not yet figured out the condition, right? But I'll tell you what, every single one of them is more than capable of successfully succeeding in the business world. Not even the hint of a question on that matter. So caught up. What I'm saying here is there's a lot of pushback on mental health disability claims. You have to be smarter, you have to be more careful, be more creative, you have to be the educator, you have to be patient, you have to really paint a narrative that allows people who are resistant to sympathizing with you to build a bridge. You need to build a bridge and teach them. Teach them that people they care about are probably dealing with the same things. Teach them that if they think of everyone as human beings, and they think of mental health disabilities as no different than physical disabilities, it's just a medical condition in this context that makes employment a little bit more difficult, and you just need an accommodation. And if you can get there, if you can build that bridge, it's a valuable claim. It's a valuable claim. But you will face many challenges, not the least of which is getting an attorney to believe in you. This is something I talk about a lot in this channel, and it makes people mad. I think it makes attorneys mad because they feel like I'm calling them out. I think it makes some mental health advocates angry because they think I'm being rude. I'm not. I see the problem. I talk about the problem. I try to address the problem. I might get it wrong. I'm often wrong in my life. Many people have told me I'm wrong more often than I'm right. That may be true. I think they're wrong. But under their own premise, that would not necessarily be that meaningful, right? I think talking about this, I think having this conversation, I think answering your question, I think you asking your question, and all are on the right path to addressing this issue in this field. I'm well aware that this discussion could kind of go poorly for me. But that being said, I do think it's very important. So I hope this answered your question. If it did, if it was helpful in some way, like, subscribe, comment down below, share the channel so it can grow. Take care.